For thousands of years, human beings fought wars that vanished forever. Kings rose, cities burned, entire armies disappeared into the dust of history, and nobody remembered exactly what happened. No written accounts, no eyewitness descriptions, no detailed records. History simply swallowed them whole. But one battle was different. More than 3,400 years ago, an army marched out of Egypt. Its king was young, its enemies were many, and one decision would determine whether his army achieved immortality or disappeared forever. A decision so dangerous that even his own generals begged him not to do it. Ahead lay a narrow mountain pass, perfect for an ambush. One attack, and the Egyptian army could be destroyed before the battle even began. Yet the pharaoh chose that road anyway. Why? Because he believed something the enemy did not. And what happened next would become the oldest detailed battle story ever recorded. This is the story of the Battle of Megiddo, 1458 BC. The ancient world looked very different from today. No countries, no modern cities, no engines, no gunpowder. Power belonged to kings, and among those kings, few ruled lands as rich as Egypt. The Nile River flowed through the desert like a green ribbon. Every year it flooded the land, and every year it left behind rich black soil. Farmers harvested wheat and barley, merchants traveled the river, priests worshipped powerful gods, and massive temples rose toward the sky. Egypt was one of the greatest civilizations on earth, but Egypt had not always been strong. Centuries earlier, foreign invaders known as the Hyksos had conquered much of the country. They introduced new weapons, new tactics, and perhaps most importantly, horses and chariots. Eventually, Egypt drove them out. But the lesson remained. A kingdom that stopped fighting would not survive. Now a new ruler sat upon the throne. His name was Thutmose III. For years he had ruled beside the powerful Queen Hatshepsut, but now she was gone, and for the first time the young pharaoh ruled alone. Many foreign kings saw opportunity. Many believed Egypt had become vulnerable. Many believed the young pharaoh lacked experience. They were about to discover how wrong they were. Far to the north, the Prince of Kadesh watched events carefully. He saw political change, he saw uncertainty, and he saw opportunity. The Prince of Kadesh began building an alliance. Warriors arrived from Syria, tribal leaders arrived from Canaan. Kings and nobles joined the coalition. Soon, thousands of soldiers stood united against Egypt. Their headquarters would be the city of Megiddo, a city positioned on important trade routes, a city protected by strong walls, a city that controlled movement throughout the region. If Egypt lost Megiddo, its influence in Canaan could collapse. The rebels believed Egypt would hesitate. Instead, the pharaoh prepared for war. Across Egypt, soldiers were summoned, archers, spearmen, chariot crews, scouts, engineers, supply workers. Thousands answered the call. Some came for glory, others came for wealth. Many came because their pharaoh commanded it. The army assembled near the eastern frontier. Then the march began. Day after day, the soldiers crossed to the Sinai. The desert seemed endless. Dust filled the air. The sun burned overhead. Yet the army continued moving north. At night, campfires lit the darkness. Soldiers sharpened bronze weapons. Priests offered prayers. Veterans shared stories of earlier campaigns. And among the younger recruits, fear quietly spread. Because everyone knew what awaited them: war. After weeks of marching, the Egyptians finally reached the city of Yehim. And there, the pharaoh faced the most important decision of his campaign. 3 roads led as the Egyptian army prepared for war. Events far to the north were already unfolding. The Prince of Kadesh knew that Egypt was entering a dangerous period. A powerful ruler had died. A young pharaoh had taken full control. And throughout history, moments like these often created opportunity. The rulers of Canaan watched carefully. Many had once paid tribute to Egypt: gold, silver, food, soldiers. But now they began questioning Egyptian authority. Why obey a distant king? Why continue paying tribute? Why not fight for independence? The Prince of Kadesh offered an answer: rebellion. One by one, cities joined his coalition. Warriors arrived from every direction. Some came seeking freedom, others came seeking power, many came seeking wealth. Soon, the coalition grew into one of the largest military alliances Egypt had faced in generations. At its center stood Megiddo, a city unlike any other, protected by powerful walls, positioned above vital trade routes, and surrounded by fertile lands. Whoever controlled Megiddo controlled movement throughout much of the region. The coalition believed this city would protect them. The coalition believed Egypt would hesitate. The coalition believed they had time, but they underestimated Thutmose III. The young pharaoh understood something important. If the rebellion succeeded, other cities might follow. Egypt's empire could begin to unravel. Trade routes would be threatened, resources would be lost, enemies would grow stronger, and eventually war could reach Egypt itself. The rebellion could not be ignored. It had to be crushed. And so Thutmose ordered the mobilization of one of the most powerful armies in the ancient world. Across Egypt, messengers carried orders. Military officers gathered recruits. Weapons were inspected, chariots repaired, supply trains organized. The kingdom prepared for war. Thousands answered the call. Archers, spearmen, chariot crews, scouts, engineers, porters, priests. Every man understood the importance of the mission. Some sought glory, others sought reward. Many simply obeyed the command of their pharaoh. For in Egypt, the pharaoh was not merely a king. He was believed to rule by divine authority, chosen by the gods themselves. To serve him was to serve divine order. As the army assembled, priests offered blessings, sacred rituals were performed, offerings were made to Amun-Ra. The soldiers prepared themselves physically and spiritually, because many knew some would never return home. The march north began. Thousands of feet moved across the desert. The sun burned overhead. Dust filled the air, yet the army continued, day after day, week after week, slowly approaching destiny. By the time they reached Gaza, their presence was no longer secret. The enemy knew they were coming. The campaign had begun, and soon the fate of... After reaching Gaza, the Egyptian army continued north. Day after day, the soldiers advanced deeper into enemy territory. The closer they came to Megiddo, the greater the tension became. Scouts moved ahead of the main army. Messengers rode constantly between commanders. Every report mattered. Every hill could hide an enemy force. Every valley could become a battlefield. Finally, after nearly 3 weeks of marching, the Egyptians reached Yehim. And there, the campaign entered its most dangerous phase, because between the Pharaoh and Megiddo stood 3 possible roads. Only one would lead to victory. The others could lead to disaster. The first road approached from the north, wide, open, easy to travel. The second road approached from the south, also safe, also predictable. Most commanders would have chosen one of these routes immediately, but there was a third road, a road feared by many of the generals, the Aruna Pass, a narrow mountain path winding through steep rocky cliffs, so narrow that soldiers would be forced to march in a long, vulnerable column, so dangerous that a small enemy force could trap an entire army. One ambush, and Egypt's campaign could end before the battle even began. That evening, Thutmose III summoned his generals. The council gathered around campaign maps. Oil lamps flickered against the tent walls. Outside, thousands of soldiers waited for the decision. Inside, the debate became intense. The generals strongly opposed the Aruna Pass. They warned the pharaoh repeatedly. The enemy surely expected an attack. The coalition could easily block the exit. The army would be trapped, destroyed, massacred. The safer roads offered less risk. Why gamble everything? Why risk the future of Egypt? For several moments, the young pharaoh listened silently. Then he spoke. If the enemy expected caution, then caution could become a weakness. If the enemy believed Egypt would avoid the Aruna Pass, then perhaps that was exactly where Egypt should go. The room fell silent. It was a bold idea, a dangerous idea, perhaps the most dangerous decision of the entire campaign. Yet the more Thutmose considered it, the more convinced he became. The enemy expected him to think like every other commander. Instead, he would do the unexpected. The order was given. The Egyptian army would march through the Aruna Pass. At dawn, the army entered the mountains. Immediately, the march became difficult. The road narrowed. The formations stretched out for miles. Chariots were dismantled, supplies carried by hand. Pack animals struggled through rough terrain. Hour after hour, the army moved deeper into the pass, and with every step, the danger increased. Every soldier understood the risk. If enemy warriors appeared above the cliffs, the Egyptians would have little chance of escape. Many watched the ridges constantly, expecting arrows, expecting ambush, expecting death. But nothing happened. No attack came. No enemy warriors appeared. No arrows fell from the hills. The coalition had made a critical mistake. Believing no commander would dare use the Aruna Pass, they concentrated their forces elsewhere. And now, the pharaoh's gamble was working. By midday, the first Egyptian soldiers emerged from the mountains. Ahead stretched the plain of Megiddo. For the first time, the city came into view. Its walls rose above the landscape, its towers stood in the distance, and somewhere beyond those walls, the enemy waited. But now, the coalition commanders faced a terrible surprise. The Egyptians had appeared where nobody expected them. The army had bypassed their defenses. The initiative now belonged to Egypt. As sunset approached, the Egyptians established camp near the battlefield. Campfires appeared across the plain. Weapons were sharpened, armor prepared, horses fed. Tomorrow, thousands of men would fight. Tomorrow, history would be written. And tomorrow, the Battle of Megiddo would begin. The sun had barely risen above the hills when movement spread across the battlefield. Thousands of warriors began taking their positions. Across the plain, the coalition army emerged from around Megiddo. Warriors from Canaan, warriors from Syria, chariot crews, archers, spearmen, all preparing for what would become one of the most famous battles of the ancient world. Behind them stood the city of Megiddo, its walls towering above the battlefield, its gates open, ready to receive any survivors. The coalition commanders still possessed a large army, but they had lost one important advantage: surprise. The pharaoh had stolen it from them. The gamble of Aruna Pass had succeeded. Now, everything would be decided by force. As the morning sun climbed higher, the Egyptian army advanced. At its center stood Pharaoh Thutmose III. The Egyptian records describe him as shining like a god of war. His soldiers watched him closely, because if the pharaoh showed fear, the army would feel it. But Thutmose showed none. The order was given, and the battle began. At first, the archers stepped forward. Thousands of arrows filled the sky. Egyptian arrows, coalition arrows. Both sides unleashed deadly volleys. The air seemed alive with flying shafts. Men fell, shields shattered. The battlefield erupted into chaos, yet neither side broke, not yet. Then came the infantry. Rows of spearmen advanced. Warriors carrying axes and sickle swords followed behind. The distance between the armies disappeared. Bronze crashed against bronze. Spears struck shields. Axes cut through the dust-filled air. Everywhere, men fought desperately for survival. No commander could fully control what happened now. The battlefield belonged to chaos, and in the middle of that chaos, the Egyptian chariots moved, fast, light, deadly. Teams of horses raced across the plain. Archers standing inside the chariots fired arrows while moving. The coalition struggled to respond. Their heavier chariots lacked the speed of the Egyptians. Again and again, Egyptian attacks struck weak points in the enemy line. Pressure increased. The coalition began losing cohesion. Small gaps appeared, then larger gaps, then entire sections started falling back. The coalition commanders attempted to restore order. They shouted commands, moved reserves, tried to stabilize the line, but momentum had shifted, and momentum is often more powerful than numbers. The Egyptian advance continued. The enemy line bent, then cracked, then finally, it broke. Panic spread across the battlefield. One unit began retreating, then another. Soon thousands of warriors were running toward Megiddo. Some threw down weapons, others abandoned shields. Many cared only about reaching safety. The coalition army was collapsing. The Battle of Megiddo was over. Egypt had won. But then something unexpected happened. Instead of immediately pursuing the fleeing enemy into the city, many Egyptian soldiers stopped. The battlefield was covered with valuable loot, weapons, armor, supplies, jewelry, animals. The temptation proved too great. Many warriors began gathering treasure, and that delay changed everything. Because while the Egyptians collected spoils, enemy survivors rushed into Megiddo. The city gates slammed shut. What could have become a complete destruction of the coalition became a siege. The Pharaoh was furious. Victory had been achieved, but the opportunity for total victory had been lost. Now Megiddo would have to be taken the hard way. The Egyptians surrounded the city. No food entered, no supplies left, no escape remained. Days passed, then weeks, then months. Inside the city, conditions worsened. Food became scarce. Hope slowly disappeared. The defenders understood the truth. No army was coming to save them. No miracle would break the siege. Eventually, the rulers of the coalition surrendered. One by one, they emerged from the city, bringing gifts, tribute, and promises of loyalty. The rebellion was finished. Egypt had won. Thutmose III had secured one of the greatest victories of his career. But perhaps the most remarkable thing was not the victory itself. It was the record. Egyptian scribes carefully documented the campaign, the march, the council of generals, the 3 roads, the Aruna Pass gamble, the battle, the siege. Everything was recorded, everything was preserved, and thousands of years later, those inscriptions still survive.